So let's say that we have a box or a machine, okay? And I'll even make it three-dimensional. There we go. Now, this machine belongs to Francis. So because it belongs to Francis, we're going to give this machine the label or the title or the letter F. Okay, so F because it's Francis's machine. Now, what Francis's machine does is it takes the variable X and it multiplies it by 3 and it adds 2 to it. So what does that mean? Well, that means if I input the number 4 into Francis's machine, then what it's going to do is it's going to take that number 4, so in this case my 4 would be my X, it takes that number 4 and it multiplies it by 3 and it adds 2 to it. So once that number 4 goes through Francis's machine, it's going to output me the number 14. So we kind of had the input over here and the output over this side. And the words that we like to use when we're talking about functions, instead of input, we talk about the domain. And instead of output, we talk about the range. So once again, if let's say I put the number -2 into Francis's machine, then Francis's machine, denoted by this equation here, takes that number, -2, and it adds 2 to it. So I end up with -6 plus 2, so I get -4 as an output. How do we write this? So in notation, well, we would say for the top example, so this one here, we would say that f of 4, in other words, if I give Francis's machine the number 4, it gives me an output of 14. So that's kind of the notation that we use there. Likewise, for this one here, we're saying, okay, well, if I give Francis the number -2, okay, he'll pop it into his machine and he'll give me the number -4 back. Let's take a look at another example. So this time we have our machine again. But this time we might be looking at Grace's machine. So we might be using the letter G for Grace here. And what Grace does is Grace takes the variable Y this time, okay, and she multiplies it by 2 and then subtracts 7 from it. So what does that mean? Well, if I input the number 5 into Grace's machine, okay, then Grace multiplies that number by 2 and then she subtracts 7 from it. So in return from Grace, I would get the number 3 in this case. And how do we denote that using a function notation? Well, we say that G of 5, so if I give Grace the number 5, she will give me back the number 3. So if I wanted to work out what, let's say, G of 4 is, well, everywhere I see, so here in this case, my Y is a 4. So everywhere I see a Y over this side, I have to put a 4 in. So I do 2 times 4 subtract 7, so I just get 1. Likewise, well, what is G of -1? Well, in this case, Y is -1. Okay, so everywhere I see a Y over here, I have to put a -1 in because that's the rule of the machine. So I do 2 lots of -1, subtract 7. So in this case, I get -2 minus 7, which is -9. What about if I put in the letter T into Grace's function? Well, in this case, my Y is equal to my T. So everywhere that I see a Y over here, I have to put a T in. So I just end up with 2 lots of T, subtract 7 would be my answer there. Let's take a look at one more example, okay? So this time we might be looking at Harry's function. And Harry's function takes the variable X, and what it does is it multiplies it by 3, it subtracts 4 from it, and then it adds the letter Y. Okay, well, what would happen if I gave Harry's function the number 1? Well, in this case, everywhere I see my X, so in this case my X is 1, so everywhere I see an X over here, I have to put a 1 in. So I get 3 lots of 1, subtract 4, plus Y. I can't put a 1 into this Y because 1 only for X's, so X's only. Harry's machine only takes X's. So I end up with 3 minus 4, which is -1, plus Y, and we might like to write that as Y minus 1, and that would be the answer to that question. Likewise, if I wanted to work out what happens if I put the letter B into Harry's machine, well, in this case, my B is my X, okay? So everywhere I see an X over here, I have to put a B in. So I get 3 lots of B minus 4 plus Y would be my answer to that question. So hopefully that's made a little bit of sense about some of the introduction to functions, the machine analogy, and the notation and the language that we use when we're talking about these functions. Okay, specifically, what's going to be really important as well is the language here of domain and range. So domain just meaning input and range meaning output.